welcome back to Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I am Brad.
I'm Metallic Pete.
And I'm Giff.
Good one, Pete. Good one.
Thank you. A
little hint there. So we are recording these for July, and we decided to put together a little special series of episodes for this month here. So what do you do in July lots of times, especially when you're a kid and you're out of school? What do you and your family do?
Go on vacation.
Go on vacation, Dad? That's
Wally
right.
World,
You
Dad?
go on vacation. and
Hawaii?
We are huge fans of the Vacation movie series, specifically the first one, but we'll get into others as well.
God.
Christmas too. And so we are going to take this month to get away from our 1 year at a time, and we're going to discuss all 4 of the original Vacation movies, including Vegas Vacation, which wasn't National Lampoon's, but is still Clark and Ellen.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking
It's
about
fine.
Vacation tonight, National Lampoon's. And then our next week will be European Vacation, who somebody likes, but not many people that are on this call right now.
There's one person that likes it, and he happens to be one of our hosts of our show.
It'll be fantastic trying to understand why.
Mhm.
And then our third episode will be Christmas Vacation, Christmas in July, and we will finish off the month with Vegas Vacation. So we are going to talk about National Lampoon's Vacation tonight, which was one of the most important movies to me as a kid growing up and of my whole life. And so I have been so excited to do this movie ever since we started recording this podcast, assuming that when we do 1983, this would be my choice or somebody's choice.
Mhm.
But we are going to have other options in 1983 now because we're doing it in this special series of episodes. So this is our summer vacation series, and we're kicking it off with National Lampoon's Vacation from 1983. All right, we're going to start this off by talking about some vacation memories of our own, and then we'll get into the movie. So I asked you guys to come up with a memory of a vacation from when you were a kid, like Rusty and Audrey, and a vacation that you remember from when you were an adult that was meaningful to you. So let's start with the kid ones first. Who wants to go first?
Sure, I can start with a couple of them.
Let me know.
The first one, I do want to bring up my first road trip memory as a kid. I think it was probably 1981. I'm just guessing. It seems like it was in there somewhere, but we borrowed my grandpa's an old beater. It was a diesel car. I don't remember exactly what kind, but it made a lot of noise and was a lot of fun. And then we took it to Denver, Colorado. And that thing going up in the mountains was not fun. We were going about 10 miles an hour with the road like that. Everyone's just flying past us, no problem. And it's like blowing like black smoke. And I just remember that visual, and it's really amazing that we made it back okay. But I do remember it was a great trip.
Were you guys like Lloyd?
It was
and
just
Harry?
my family.
Okay, but you borrowed his car, but the 5 of you went.
Yes, it's
Okay.
it's the only. Actually, I can remember only 2 vacations that we as a family took. All 5 of us. We took like different. Yeah, because I'm so much younger than my brother and sister, and so it's like they were already off to college by the time that I even got to kindergarten. My sister was going to college in that time frame, and so it's like I was a mistake. Yeah,
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I'm the same, Pete. I wouldn't.
Yeah, we were both mistakes. I'm not even supposed to be here today.
My
Oh,
parents
wrong
wanted
movie.
me.
But it was a fun trip because it was my first time in the mountains, and we went to Denver, saw Denver. We went to the Mint, and I think it was closed. We didn't actually we were all excited. We're going to go see the U.S. Mint that was there that you could tour, but it was closed, of course, when we were there.
It's like Wally World.
That's right. I think we stopped at the Black Hills and saw Mount Rushmore on the way out there, and it was a great trip. The other trip, say that again, Brad?
They don't close Florida.
No, they don't.
It's a state.
The other trip was actually not Wally World, but it was Disneyland. When we went to California.
Is this the one?
I was 6 years old. No, I was.
Oh,
it was 19. This was actually around it was like 1982, I think. And it's funny that we're bringing this up because we flew out. I have family out there. My mom's aunt and uncle, who they lived out there. We stayed with them. We did all the California stuff. We went to Universal Studios. We went to Disneyland. A lot of the same stuff we did with you, Brad, years later, but
you did
same
it all
thing
before me. So,
but I do have to give a shout out because my mom's aunt, who we stayed with, just passed away this morning. We found out. So just passing that along, little shout out to her. But they did really well. I mean, the husband is over 90 years old, and he still drives motorcycle all around the city and everything. He's really amazing. And so she was too. So just thought I'd throw that out there since that came up. But it was a great trip. My first time on an airplane. So I remember that. We actually had a foreign exchange student staying with us that went along on that trip. That was a year older than my sister. So she graduated in 1981 from Tyler High School.
Was that the last year of Tyler?
No, I think 1982 was because
really
my sister. I'm pretty sure that was it because I think we've said that my sister, my brother, and I all graduated from 3 different high schools because she was Tyler, my brother was Russell Tyler, and I was Russell Tyler Ruthven. So think about it that way.
My brother graduated in the last graduating class of RT.
Yep.
Okay.
I remember that.
Cool story.
Cool story for those of us that live in major cities that are listening to our show. In small towns, what they do is they pair towns together to make one high school. So
there's enough people
in rural Minnesota.
So you can get all the way to 55 people in one graduating class.
Yes.
Gifford, what are your, sorry. Go on.
Go ahead. I was just wrapping up. Go ahead to Gifford.
What are your kid memories, Giff?
Well, so we didn't take a whole lot of vacations either when I was growing up. Growing up on a dairy farm, it's hard to leave for any period of time because the cows need to be milked twice a day, and to find somebody who's willing and able to do that is difficult. But I do remember we took a trip out to Yellowstone. I believe this was around 88.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So we drove out to the Black Hills, saw the faces, hit every roadside attraction on the way there, the Petrified Forest, the Bear Country USA, if there's like a shed with antique cars,
I love Bear Country.
Yeah,
you're thinking of Murdo with the antique cars, right? Is that what it's called, Murdo?
You would know better than me, evidently. But we took a trip out there and met one of my mom's sisters and her husband and family out there. So I had some cousins, and we camped out in Yellowstone and drove around and saw Old Faithful. And so that was a fun trip. It was a long drive, I remember. We borrowed my grandma's cargo van. It was a van that she used for catering to get her cakes and buns and food and everything. Cakes. Yeah. So this cargo van just had an old yellow couch in the back of it facing sideways. And that's what we rode in all the way out to me and my brother in the back on that couch. That
sounds awesome.
Yeah. And me and my brother at that time, we were best pals, I mean, we were 12 and 14 years old, so it was nothing but sunshine and rainbows at that point. So we got along famously in the back there.
So this was just the 4 of you two?
Yeah, just the 4 of us. Yep, mom, dad, my brother, and myself. So that was one that I remember as a kid, and I will bring up the adult one after a bit here.
All right. Well, we have a very and growing up in southern Minnesota, I think it's probably likely that this is the case for most people. We have a very similar topic to discuss here, or place we went. So mine is the Black Hills. I don't know if it was 81 or 82. I was like 5 or 6 years old, but I have vivid memories of this trip. So my family is a family of 5, and then I have we have my mom's sister lived in Sioux Falls, and so her and her husband and my two cousins from their family, and my grandma and grandpa, who lived in Tyler, right next to us. All 11 of us went to the Black Hills in two cars. So
Oh,
the women
boy.
were in one car and the men were in the other. So I can remember in our car, I sat in the middle front between my uncle and I think my dad, and I think my brother and cousin and my grandpa sat in the back. Maybe not. Maybe my dad sat in the back. I'm not sure. I'm sure they switched drivers too. But so back then you could sit in the middle in the front, and that's where I sat. And so we all got in two cars and headed out there for a week. Um, and we did everything. Like we went to the Badlands, we went to Wall Drug. I can remember we stayed at a place called Kimp's Camp. Like I remember the name of the place we stayed. I bet nobody else in my family could tell you that. And I was 6 years old, and I can tell you that. We went to Mount Rushmore. We went to a place called Evans Gulch in Hot Springs. It's this big indoor water park with like this natural, I think it was a natural spring in there. Another memory that I think most people do remember is we did the Needles Highway, and people got really sick, and we pulled over several times for people to puke on the side of the road.
Oh, wow.
And so, but I just loved that, and I can remember it so well. And we have a photo album with pictures from that trip, which helped me remember it too. But that was great. And we didn't go on many trips when I was a kid. Partially, my parents went on some trips, but we also had cows, at least for part of the time, and for farmers. I took one short trip to northern Minnesota, but my brother didn't go on that, so it was just my sister and my mom and dad. And then the only other real big family trip we all took was in '91 when my brother and sister were both in college, and we went to Florida to Disney World. So this was kind of it. This was our big road trip, but I loved it. It was great, and I think that's one of the reasons why I identified with the movie at such a young age, is because we've all been. You guys borrowed cars. Yep. So much of it is just, it's so great and well done. So that was mine, Black Hills, and I've been back there 3 or 4 times since. And you do the same things every time, and it never gets old.
It never gets old.
Bear Country,
I love that
Bear
trip.
Country. We did Reptile Gardens. We did everything you could do out there. Gardens, we went to Deadwood.
Yep.
So
you got to do Deadwood. Yep.
All right, let's hit on our adult ones too, and then get into the movie. Pete, what is your adult memory?
Well, as far as road trips, there's several. We go on vacation. We do these road trips about once a year or more.
You're on vacation basically.
We're always traveling
every month of the year. So
yeah, maybe not quite that much, but
like.
I love a good road trip. Our family loves a good road trip. I would much rather drive than fly pretty much anywhere, as long as I got the time and everything. Something about the adventure of just mapping it out, finding a decent hotel. Sometimes they're good hotels. Sometimes they suck, which is part of the fun. Just stopping along convenience stores along the way on the interstate. I don't know. It's fun for me.
Sandwich from a gas station.
Getting a sandwich from a gas station. Probably
hey, kids, you thirsty?
So a couple of years ago, we went to Breckenridge, Colorado, which was actually where parts of Christmas Vacation was filmed, so that's appropriate. It's the scene where he's going out to get
the scene when we talk about the movie and how it doesn't quite fit Chicago and Illinois.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's where they were filming it when they went out to get the Christmas tree at the beginning of the movie. Is in Breckenridge, Colorado, and I think maybe the sledding hill was also filmed there too. But that was a great trip. Beautiful country. We do ski, but we didn't get to go skiing that weekend because our kids aren't really into it, and we didn't have much, something to do for the kids while we were doing that. But it was still fun to see the ski slopes and everything. Yellowstone is the other one that stands out, and again, we did that. We saw the Yellowstone, the Grand Tetons. Did the Black Hills on the way out. Never, like you said, it never gets old. And the thing about the Black Hills is that it's a perfect distance away, where it's like you do it in a day and a half, you're there, and it's not all the way across the country or anything. And just fun interstate. Yeah, you can. I love driving west it's way more fun to drive west than to drive east for me.
Oh yes.
Just because it's just mountains and it's wide open and everything. You go east, it's like more cities and everything. I don't know. Those would be the ones that stand out for me.
And have you had any issues on these road trips? It's all been like...
No. Well, the one issue that we did have that I know my wife is going to want me to bring up is when we went to Tennessee, a different trip. This was last year. It was during COVID, but we went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and we got a cabin. We rented it's like a VRBO that's out in the middle of the woods and everything. Beautiful cabin, beautiful view and everything. But when we got there after one of the days out on the town, it was dark, and it gets really, really dark when you're in the mountains, right? It's not like around here where the street lights and everything. We're driving through the mountains and you don't know where you're going. There's leaves on all the roads and everything, so you couldn't really see where the road was. I've got my GPS on to try and find where we're supposed to be, and it took us up like a really super steep mountain. It literally was like this. There's probably different ways to get there, but this is the way the Google Maps told us to go. So this is the way we went. And we wound up like on a dead end. And so then I had to back up and like turn around on this narrow road. And the wife and kids
they closed roads, they put up big signs like this one.
Exactly. My wife and kids were screaming the whole time because they thought I was going to drive off the edge of the mountain. And but we got through it. So it was fun. It's one of those adventures that she always brings up now.
Oh, yes. How about you?
Of course, she hates technology and she hates Google Maps and everything. And so that's why she doesn't trust it.
So my adult memory of a trip is similar to a kid memory because my mom's side of the family has been going to Jellystone Park in Warrens, Wisconsin since I think 1983. It's not an every summer thing, but we did it a few times as I was growing up, and it's continued on. Now all the cousins have families of their own, and the last time we went was 18. And it's the park is pretty much the same. They've expanded it quite a bit. Back when I was a kid, we would all camp. Now that we're adults, that I'm an adult, we rent these big villas. There's like 5 villas all connected. Some of the cousins pull their campers and still camp. But we're going to go again this year, coming up the first full week in August. And I think we'll have something like, if everybody came, we'd have like 75 people there. Obviously, not everybody can make it all at the same time, but it's just a fun trip. It's not too bad of a drive from northern Minnesota. It's about 5 hours. So it's not a real long road trip by any means. But it's just nice to spend 4 days there. You can mini golf with the kids, and there's all kinds of different things to do there. One of the things I love the most is the human foosball court that they have.
I've seen that.
Which is a lot of fun. It's not one of those inflatables. It's actually in the sand, kind of fenced off. So it's just a really great time. A lot of memories there growing up as a kid and now as an adult taking my own kids there. So it's just a lot of fun. Good way to hang out and catch up with that side of the family.
All right. My adult memory would be, I mean, we go on a trip almost every year now. So our kids are very lucky and spoiled. They get to go to all these great places. So there's a lot of good ones to pick from, but it was very simple because we took the Wally World trip one year. So we had just bought a van, which took a lot of convincing of my wife to get a van because I always wanted it. And we got this van. We're like, okay, we got to go on some road trips now. We got a van. I played in this golf tournament, and there was a silent auction afterwards. And one of the things was 4 tickets to Disneyland, and they were park hoppers to the other park that's there, the California Adventure Park. And the minimum bid was like $100, and I bid $105. I was the only bidder. I won 4 tickets to Disneyland for $100. It was
nice.
The greatest. It was so awesome. So I'm on my phone. I'm texting her back and forth. We're going to get this. We're going to Disneyland. And so we first talked, are we going to fly? What are we going to do? But we love road trips too. And this was our big chance to go on a road trip. Our kids that year were 8 and 6. So we thought it was a great time to go on a road trip. And it turned into this epic 2-week, because when I start looking at a map, I find places I want to go, and I'm really good at it. I mean, my wife will tell you that. She'll just let me plan it out. So we went to the Black Hills to start, just kind of drove through. We went to Devil's Tower. We went into Wyoming. We went down to Colorado. We were at a dinosaur national park. We went to Utah. We went to Zion National Park. We spent a night in Vegas, all on the way to Disneyland. Then we spent 2 nights in Anaheim. Went to the beach there too. And then we went down to San Diego. We went to the zoo and Legoland and spent another night there. Then we drove to Tucson and went to Saguaro National Park to see the cacti. And then we went to El Paso. We went to a Tombstone too, a little bit off the road. Went to El Paso and spent a night there. Then we went to Carlsbad Cavern. So the whole return trip from Disneyland was just because I always wanted to go to Carlsbad Caverns. So it took quite a bit of doing to get all the way around there to get back up. But we did it. And then we went back up through Denver and home. And it was the greatest 2 weeks we ever had. We did not have any of the problems that the Griswolds had. But we referred to the movie daily, hourly. Everybody's on Facebook at this time. So I was posting pictures and quotes constantly. I won my daughter a big Minion at Legoland. And we put a hoodie on it and put it on the roof of the van and took a picture like we lost Aunt Edna. It was the best trip ever, and the kids were they were so great. They were perfect for that whole time. And I loved it. So that's my big one. Honorable mentions would be we went back to the Black Hills as friends too. Pete, you were there. About what, 5?
Yes, I was there.
Gifford, you were there too, right?
I don't think so.
All of us?
Oh, it was
big group.
Oh no, you're right.
No.
It was Chris, Hummel, you, me, Larry, and then Dave was out there and Mark for a little bit, but they left.
I'm always there in spirit, Brad.
But that was a great trip. I also went there my parents' 50th anniversary. They got a big, nice VRBO cabin, and our entire family went out there that year. So I've had multiple great trips to the Black Hills. But that 2-week road trip through the entire west of the United States was something that will never be duplicated and was awesome.
Love the West.
Love the West. I love the desert. Huge fan.
Huge fan
of the desert. All right.
Well, Utah is another.
Without further ado, let's talk about National Lampoon's Vacation. You guys got anything else to add before we get into it?
I'm good.
No.
All right. So I tried to keep us on some kind of a track with this, because it'd be really easy for us to just go off and start recreating and re-quoting every line in the movie. So I have a series of topics, and hopefully we can run through them that way. So my first question is, what memories do you have of this movie as a kid? Like, when did you see it? What do you remember from when you were a kid? Because for me, I remember it very young, but I'll let you guys go first.
Well, I don't really remember watching this much as a kid. Okay. What I remember is in college, particularly freshman year, we would go to the video store and rent movies. And generally we'd go through and buy and rent the classics, which would be Vacation, Stripes, Blues Brothers, Spies Like Us.
Caddyshack.
And we'd take, and we'd take those back and we'd watch, Fast Times, we'd watch those, kind of binge them. And that's what I remember, because I don't really remember seeing this on television, and we didn't own it when I was growing up. So
okay, interesting.
Yeah,
but you still love it.
Oh, good Lord, yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
How about you, Pete?
I do remember. Well, I don't remember the first time that I actually saw the movie, but I remember it being a big movie in our family at the time. When it came out, and when videotapes were first coming out, you could go rent movies. That was always the one that was staring you right in the face, right? When you the one of the great, it's got the great cover and everything.
It does have a great cover.
but yeah, it was one that I think it was on network TV quite a few times too, but it was edited, of course, so it wasn't as good. But yeah, I do remember. I remember the movies that stand out to me were E.T. because I was big into that kind of stuff when I was a kid, Vacation, and Airplane. Those were the ones that I remember the most. And man, I just remember every single time I'd see it at the video store, I would want to rent Vacation, and it was just it just never got old. Still hasn't gotten old, and yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I think, well, and we'll get to this later actually, but you watch it with a different perspective when you're an adult dad now too. I mean, that's
true, and you do go on these road trips.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I love this movie so much. I remember it was on TV all the time. So we had HBO. We had a satellite on our farm, and we got HBO. And I think that's the main reason why I saw it so many times. And this was one of the first movies that I loved. So we would have been 7 years old when it came out. So I would have been like probably 8, 9 when I'm watching it for the first time. One of the first things that I know I remember about this movie is it was my first time seeing nudity. I mean, that stood out because you're a young kid and it's like, what, what is this?
Well, it definitely wasn't the last.
Well, and it's a 1980s movie, so you need to have the gratuitous, quick scene.
Yeah, and the scene where it's in there is just so pointless, but it's that's why it's in there, because that's what they did. But there's so many things I love, but these are the things that really stood out that I remember, like as a kid, these things really stuck with me. I love the Holiday Road song at the beginning and the postcards. I love that opening. The Family Truckster.
One of which is Bemidji's Paul and Babe.
That is true.
The opening credits.
Yes. Excuse me.
The Family Truckster, which is just iconic now, but I mean, as a kid, that car was you understood how funny that was just watching it, even though you weren't driving or anything. Watching it this time, I've never really thought about it much, but I'd really love to see what car he was supposed to get. What does the Antarctic Blue sports wagon look like? I'd love to compare them.
This is for those that haven't seen a movie. This is the Metallic P reference. When I said I'm Metallic Pete, it was the color that they got. Yes, you got the Metallic Pete.
What I want to know is what is the optional rally fun pack?
Rally fun pack
with the CB on the Super Sports Wagon he was supposed to get.
The other things that really stood out as a kid that I totally remember is when I was young. I totally remember the Grand Canyon scene where he puts his arm around Ellen for 2 seconds and shakes his head and goes. The Chariots of Fire running into, I thought that was one of the greatest things.
Yep.
Edna dying, of course, was hilarious to a kid. And then just those quotes that just stick with you, that you just hear them over and over. And then you brought it up, Pete. This is a hard R movie, but it's still a movie that, like, if your parents were cool, I mean, I don't know. It's a family movie at the same time. Because there's so much of it as a kid that you could still relate to and love. And so if they're willing to let you watch it, or if you got the edited version on
TV.
I mean, it's not a family movie, but it is a family movie, and our family loved this movie. I mean, we all love this movie, and it was one of those could share and agree on that. That's a funny movie. So those are my memories from that age. So I don't know. You think we need to give any background about this movie? I mean, we probably shouldn't need to give much, right?
I don't think so. Good Lord.
I would hope not. Anyway, they're going to Wally World, driving from Chicago to LA, and chaos on the way ensues. There's so I asked that just because my next topic here were, what are some of your favorite scenes in the movie or bits? Because some of these are just bits that I just loved. I wouldn't necessarily classify them as a whole scene. So what are some of the ones that stand out to you that you like the most?
The one that I don't remember as much as a kid being that funny, but I get it becomes funnier and funnier every time I see it, is when they're in Dodge City. The Hey Underpants.
Yo, you didn't find that funny as a kid?
No, I did, but it was like it didn't stand out. I don't remember it standing out as much as a kid as it does now for some reason. It's just one that
Why do you think it's so funny?
One that I find just the hey underpants line just gets me every time.
Move your chicken wings.
He's like, hey, we're gonna make fun of this bartender.
Oh.
Well, I think and it's one of my favorite lines.
So that one, and then the St. Louis part.
Well, we're gonna get to that.
I know we're gonna get to that as its own separate topic, but
and then of course, a hilarious scene.
Yes, that did. Well, the other one I had written down, we've already kind of discussed, is when he is getting the car. That whole thing is hilarious when he does get the metallic P and gets that whole exchange. Eugene Levy is great.
He's so good.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that he was only in a small part of the movie.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, but he nailed it.
And he did nail it.
That's another topic coming up.
Yeah.
Right.
Gifford, what's your favorite scenes or?
Well, I found myself laughing at the beginning of every scene, just in anticipation
knowing what's coming.
You know?
Yeah.
So like as soon as it opens and they're driving into the car lot, like you just start laughing because you know Eugene Levy's coming out. You know the car's gonna get crushed. But my favorite scene in this movie is after they drop off Aunt Edna and Clark loses his shit. And he goes on his rant.
Classic scene.
It's just that to me, because you've just been waiting. All these horrible things have been happening, and he's trying to put on a happy face over and over and over. Everything's fine. Everything will be okay. He's spending way too much money. Nothing's going right, and it finally hits him, and he snaps. And I love that scene. The whole.
And speaking of the edited version, you can't get the same thing out of that edited version of that scene.
No, the whole whistling zippity doo out of your asshole and don't touch it. Just the whole I love that scene.
Is that your only one for here?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have a few here I'm going to mention, and maybe they'll double up on. But some of these are more, like I said, they're more just bits. So you mentioned the beginning scene with the car. My favorite part of that is it's so ridiculous how quickly they take his car and crush it. So 5 minutes later, he asks for the car back, and the whole thing is crushed. And he walks over and he tries to open the door. My God, it's just great because they're not going to do that. It's so stupid.
Right.
There's so much.
That car that they drove in was such a pile too. It had the bubbled window, like an extra window, kind of at a 45-degree angle on the back. I mean, it was
I am not your ordinary average fool.
Right. I think you hate it now. Wait till you drive it.
A lot of these are physical gags. So one of my very favorite scenes in the whole movie is when he tries to put gas in for the first time. He can't find the gas.
Oh God.
Tank. And he's pushing the thing up against the car, and then he sees the lady next to him, and he rips off the license plate and almost hits her, and then he stretches to make it look like he doesn't know that he did that.
Which, oh my God! By the way, on that point,
he is a physical genius. I'm going to get back to Chevy Chase later, but
I know we're talking about fun facts about the movie a little bit later, but I had that one written down. That actually wasn't. What's that?
No, go on. I know what you're going to say.
It actually, that was an accident that it got ripped off. It wasn't supposed to be ripped off, and it like flew. Well, I think he was supposed to rip it off, but it wasn't supposed to fly like it did.
Supposed to fly
so
over
that was,
car.
and it almost hit the other actress that was standing at the next car, and so they thought that was the funniest one, so they left it in the movie.
Well, and you talk about the physical comedy. Just even when he's walking over to the other side of the car, he winds himself up in the hose.
His leg gets caught in the hose. But speaking of that too, that shows you how great of a physical actor. I mean, so when he rips it off and throws the license plate, they easily could have just stopped and he could have just but no, he stretches and he plays it off like the scene is still going, and you'd never even know that. And then that's the best take. It's the beauty of it. I wrote down Cousin Eddie's for one of my favorite scenes. I mean, every line in that whole scene is memorable.
Yes, yes.
Gifford, you had kind of hinted at this one earlier. I love the reunion at the gas station where he says, "Hey kids, you thirsty?" and he's like his empty seat.
His eyes are plugged out.
And Ellen's trying to explain the nice man and this Indian and Daddy's back, and it's just like,
he's a genius with food additives.
Yeah, genius with food additives. That little scene is just great, and I love the family, and we'll talk more about them later too. I love at the Grand Canyon where he hits the thing and the cash register opens, so he takes the money, which you would probably expect, but he puts the check back in. So they have all his information. And then there's one more physical one. So when he has the big fight with Ellen and he's walking through the restaurant and the hotel, before he ever meets Christine Brinkley, there's a whole scene where he's just walking around. There's no dialogue. He hits his head on a chandelier. He tries to hit on girls, but you don't hear what he says. And they like give him this look and they shoo him away. If you just watch that scene, it's just funny thing after funny thing. And there is no words. It's just him just running through it and being hilarious.
What I like about that scene is the piano player just watching him move around the bar. Because you know that guy's seen guys do that over and over and over again. Just walk up to people and hit on them. And he's got the big cigar. He got the cigar with the big filter on it. Yeah.
Okay, so we've started to hit on my next topic here, but this is a big one. What are some of your favorite lines, if you can narrow them down? We've hit a few already, but I'll go first because you're thinking.
Yeah.
So it was hard. I don't even have that many written down because what I did is when we got to you mentioned the Dodge City scene, Pete. When I got to that part of the movie this time, I just kind of paused for a second and realized every single scene and every line in this movie is hilarious to me at this point. It's like you said, Giff, where you start laughing before it even gets there.
Right.
And it was too hard to track. And so I really didn't write any down, but the two that I did pick out were, I love In the Desert. It's your first moment where he says, "Good talk, son," to Russ.
Yeah, that's the one that I had.
I love that little scene where him and Russ have the beer and he tries to be a dad and then he says, "Good talk." And then my other one was the whole freak out in the car, which you've already mentioned, Gifford. So,
right.
I mean, and that's a long line, but that's just a classic scene.
So I wrote down some. Of course, I already mentioned the one. You think you hate it now, but wait till you drive it. That's such a great line.
One other one.
Go ahead.
Another really hidden one that is such a dumb line, but if you're not paying attention, right at the beginning when they back out of the garage and they go, "Watch those freeways. Watch out for the Indians."
The Indians. Yes, I got that one. Because my wife loves that line.
Those are just such, and if you're not paying attention, you're not even going to hear that, but that's just such a great, dumb line.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. And then, of course, the St. Louis scene. Kids, notice all the plight.
Yep.
And then roll them up. That's so great. We had when the kids walk in on them in the hotel when the malfunctions, and Audrey goes, "Weirdo Rama."
Weirdo Rama.
That's a good one.
But another great bit too. He points at them, and her underwear is on his finger, and then they say, "Where's Mom?" And he points to the bed, and she says, "I'm under here," and he puts the thumb down slowly,
right, and he itches his shoulder. So in the Dodge City scene, Russ complains to him and says, "Oh, that's a horrible wide erp. He was wearing jogging shoes," and he goes, "Oh, they used to, Russ.
They used to, Russ. Are you happy now? She's deaf."
And then when he wanted to go see the second biggest pile of mud, he said he'd rather see a big pile of mud than Eddie. I think that's a wonderful line. But one that my wife and I always talk about, when the first time you meet Edna, and she's talking about, she goes, "You're the ones who gave me the fruitcake for Christmas."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, we thought you liked it. It made me so sick." And Ellen goes, "We thought you liked fruitcake." And she goes, "You like throwing up every 5 minutes, Claude?" Clark. I thought so.
It's so good. Actually, probably the funniest line to me in the whole movie when I was a kid is right there where she goes, "Am I going to eat or am I going to starve to death?" Because you can still use that all. I just went on a little road trip with my brother and some friends on a golf trip, and we quoted a lot of these lines, including that one right there. So
So
And I played Holiday Road on the way to town.
One last one. When they were in the amusement park with John Candy, and he's got his BB gun. And John Candy goes, "That's not even a real gun, is it, Clark?" He goes, "What, are you kidding me? This is a Magnum PI."
You break the skin, it could cause a very bad infection.
Don't forget the exchange with the police officer when they find the leash on the back of his car. That whole thing was just hilarious. It was all ad-lib, too. It was all...
Well, I love that line,
None
too.
of it was written.
You know the penalty for animal cruelty in this state? Oh, I bet it's pretty stiff.
Well, it's probably pretty stiff.
What are your favorite lines, Pete? You got any new ones?
Well, that we've pretty much already covered all the ones that I had. But the other one that we hadn't talked about was "My daddy says I'm the best."
It's a
little disturbing.
You ever
now in
bop your
retrospect.
Yeah, you ever bop your baloney?
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll get back to more
move on
later too.
Yes.
All right. So the next topic is, I think, a good one because again, these are people that, as a kid, you don't really know who they are. But this movie has some fantastic, I wouldn't call them cameos necessarily, but secondary characters who are not part of the main family. And I'm not talking about like Eddie, who has a major scene, but other guys that have smaller parts and just kind of really nail their little parts. So who would be your favorite secondary character?
I would go with Eugene Levy in the very first scene.
You can't.
Yeah, that's so hard to beat.
Yeah,
that's the obvious answer to me on that one.
Right. Well, there's a lot.
Well, what about John Candy?
John Candy would be.
Well, John Candy was good.
I would rank them. John Candy and Eugene and the cop would be the three, or Murray's brother.
Yes.
Brian Doyle Murray. Yes.
Yeah, we like to send out a mailer.
That scene, I wrote down Eugene Levy, Brian Doyle Murray, and John Candy. But the Brian Doyle Murray is probably 1 minute long, and he maximizes his 1 minute on that screen. It is perfection. The way he's eating that watermelon and talking and spitting it out and wiping his mouth. If you go back and watch it again, I never gave that credit for how perfect he played that. And I always thought he was in it for a few more lines because he's so memorable. But it's very short, and I would... For the smaller bit ones, I'd pick him as just hammering his part right there. But Eugene Levy was fantastic.
Do you guys know, was it anybody famous that was in other movies that played the guy at the cash register? The guy that says, "Not without a major credit card."
He looks really familiar, but I don't.
That's what I kept thinking too. But I mean that
he's good.
He makes me laugh at that line too.
Yes.
Not without a major credit card.
Yeah, the way his lips are pursed. Yeah, he's just so.
And he just kind of huffs away and gets mad. And... and I like Roy Wally at the end too. I mean, he does a good job with his little part. But Brian Doyle Murray really stood out to me on this viewing as that was great.
Yep.
Yes.
Anybody else you want to mention there?
No, I don't have anybody else.
All right, so the next one is the. I don't really know what to say, but I'm just curious. So we brought up the St. Louis scene, and as a kid, a small town rural kid, I mean, you don't even know what's going on. So this scene's just hilarious to watch. But Harold Ramis has said that he totally regrets this scene, and I'm just curious what you think about it watching it now in this day and age, and if you. Because I'm not even really sure I understand what the big deal is. I mean, there seems like this in all kinds of movies. Well, I almost forgot. I just watched something the other night where it was very similar. And well, anyway, go ahead. What do you think of this scene?
I read the same thing, and the big deal was that he feels like he gave St. Louis a bad reputation in that neighborhood, especially where it was filmed, and it was unwarranted, I guess, because the neighborhood wasn't that bad, and so that was the reason for it.
I don't think of it as St. Louis. I just think of it as this is a place that they're not supposed to be.
It could have been
and they don't
any major city, St. Louis, Detroit, Chicago, New York, whatever. It's a major city, and so you're right. And I think what you're starting to say is it did kind of shape what your image is of big cities are, right? But I don't know. I thought it was still a hilarious scene, and I didn't think about it too much in that context.
To me,
I
it
do
feels
think
like,
about that scene every time. And I was just in St. Louis a couple of months ago when
there
we
you go.
drove back. Another road trip this year. We drove back from New Orleans, and we drove through St. Louis. We stopped at the Arch. We didn't go up it, but I think about that scene every time.
And sing Deep River.
Yeah, I just did that the other day, just crossing. I do that every time crossing the Mississippi River here in Minneapolis.
The old
Right.
miss. The old man.
The old man.
I literally just did that less than a week ago.
I just feel like it's satire. Like it's so overly done to point out poor neighborhoods. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. And so it just is that not what they were going for? Because if that's what they're going for, then it's like, okay, this white family does not belong in this place. And they make fun of them as much as they're making fun of Chevy Chase, and so I don't know. Maybe I missed something that you guys could add.
Well, what I like about that
by the way, on that. Oh, sorry. On that, another great line is we're from out of town. Because Chevy Chase says it. He says it perfectly in Vacation and uses the same line in Three Amigos, and it's perfect both times. Yeah. And it's my son's favorite line from Three Amigos, and he says it all the time too.
What about you, Giff?
I just like the guy's line that says, "You don't want to know for me. I'm from the west side of Chicago here on vacation." I just love that line. It's just so good.
So I don't know. I guess some people think they should take that scene out. Like I've even read like that they should edit it out when the movie's edited now. But that just seems a little bit over the top compared to other things that are out there from the '80s. And I don't know.
I think it's a funny scene. It is the it is what it is. Like they're in the inner city. That's not where they're supposed to be going because all they need to do is get across the river and continue on their way. And the funny part is that when they exit the interstate, it's daylight.
Oh, I'm getting to that.
And they're driving around for how long? Now it's dark. This is summer. It takes forever to get dark. So
well, let me skip ahead.
You can't overthink these movies.
Well, but it shows how much of an idiot he is because he's a guy's guy. He won't ask for directions. Now it's finally night. I mean, how many hours did he waste? So I just, it's hilarious.
I'll just add in what I wrote down about that because, like, and even at a younger age, I noticed this. So St. Louis and Chicago are only like 3 hours apart. Mm-hmm. So it's always they're presumably leaving for this trip in the morning. They're in St. Louis and it's still clearly daytime.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, like you said, it's dark and they need a place to stay. And it's like that timeline, which you shouldn't be thinking too hard about. But that timeline just does not make sense.
No.
I mean, they should be past Kansas City by now, right? I mean, it's like, what's going on there?
It's not like they stopped to see the arch or something.
No. All right.
Gee, Dad, can we go up? No.
That kind of ties into the next topic, which is, was there anything you noticed this time that you did not notice before? And I actually have several things written down here. So do you have any noticings that maybe you never saw before or were new to you?
Well, I had one, and I watched the end credits all the way through. Mm-hmm. And it's all the family vacation photos.
I love that, and I never noticed that.
Right, because I've never watched
it. It's like watching a scrapbook.
There was two things in there which I found hilarious. One, there's a picture of him with Christy Brinkley in the pool, and he's like holding her, and they're smiling. Well, why would that be in your family scrapbook? Mm-hmm. And two,
well, I think it's like blooper photos or whatever, right? Yeah.
No, they're all the rest are like they're like family photos. And it's what I love is that they obviously had because these are all posed. And so they had the foresight to like do these pictures while filming and then create. It's like back in the 80s, people would have slides. Let's go watch our slides. Yep. It's like watching their slideshow after the thing.
But the very last one is a picture of the family with the Marty Moose ears that are supposed to be like the Mickey Mouse. Mm-hmm. They all have Marty Moose hats on an airplane.
Yes. And I never noticed that either. They fly home.
They do.
That was so cool to see, and how stupid that I've never noticed that before. There was no way because you always wonder. So now what? They're going to drive back and do this again? Right. They dropped off the truckster and they flew home.
Well, I was going to say, what did they do with the car?
I'm sure they happily left that in a
ditch. What'd you say, Pete?
I was just saying, what they do with the car then? I don't know.
I think they left it in the Wally World parking lot.
Yep.
Anything else, Gifford, for you on that one?
It wasn't this time, but it was one of the things I noticed probably about 3 or 4 showings back, that in the beginning when Ellen and Clark are talking about their upcoming vacation and they're doing dishes.
Oh, you've taken mine here. That's a great one.
Okay, then I'll leave it for you because it wasn't one that I just noticed this time. I got others before. So okay, I'll let you take
I'll bring it up. Go ahead.
All right. So yeah, I'm good then.
How about you, Pete?
I had to write down. It wasn't like I noticed it this time around, but I hadn't really paid much attention to this when I was younger. But the older I got, I paid more and more attention to the prayer, which I wrote down. I'm going to read it here real quick.
Oh, great!
This is where I wrote down the whole thing, and I'll read it. It's when they leave Aunt Edna at the door. What do you want me to just slip her through the mail slot at the morgue?
Night deposit box.
Or whatever. Oh God, ease our suffering in this, our moment of great despair. Yea, admit this good and decent woman into thine arms in the flock of thine heavenly area up there. And Moab, he laid it down by the band of the Canaanites. And yea, though the Hindus speak of karma, I implore you, give her a break.
Give her a break.
Is that the end of it?
Yeah, that's the end of it.
Well, and that
I'm doing the best I can here. I'm not an ordained minister.
That scene has one of the worst lines of the movie because Ellen asked the kids, "I hope you learned something," and Audrey says, "Yeah, don't die if nobody's home."
You don't like that line?
Oh, it's horrible.
Well, some of those 80s movies especially, some of the lines are just so stupid, they just add to the comedy in a movie like that. So Caddyshack has a lot of those too.
Did you have any more on that topic, Pete?
No, I don't.
All right, so here's the things I noticed. So Gifford was about to say this, and maybe I've noticed it before, but this time it really I know, and then I read about this too. So they're talking about the trip, and she's not even really doing the dishes. She's just handing them to Clark, and he's just wiping them off with a rag and putting them back in the cupboard. They're not getting washed. They're not going to the dishwasher. And I read in multiple places that's one of Chevy Chase's favorite bits in the whole movie. He just thought that was so funny what he did there. And it's just classic.
Right? I'm sure it wasn't, in the script or anything.
Because it was this time watching it. I actually looked at him like, is he... What's going on? It was just,
I had noticed that before.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed this time is that they have golf clubs on the roof of the car.
Yeah.
Why in the heck would you have golf clubs? Who's going off to play golf on this trip?
Right.
That didn't make any sense. When they have the awesome dancing sandwich scene where the dog peed on the sandwiches, have you noticed there's 3 guys with Christy Brinkley, including one of them in her car?
In her car, yep.
Who are these guys and what's that all about?
They're truckers at the truck stop. They're just checking out her car.
I know, but one of them's in the car, which made it a little weird.
Yeah.
I've always noticed this, but never really put it together. I read this. I think if Chevy Chase brought this up too. Cousin, whatever the cousin's name is, who talks about bopping your baloney and he's always masturbating, he's working his hand muscles.
Yeah.
With that thing. And that's just a great bit.
All the subtle little things like that. I mean, that's what makes a movie great.
And then the other big one was at the end, which you already brought up, the pictures, and then specifically the plane picture, and I love that song. The beginning and the end song are both great, but I really watched all the way through, and I got a little bit more out of it this time.
Well, I don't think I've ever watched the end credits all the way to the end before.
I think I have. I think I've noticed it, but I've never really registered the plane thing. This time, though, I did. Okay, next topic. So one of the things the Vacation series is known for is that there's different kids in every movie. And we can maybe get into fun facts, but do you know why that is?
Well, I know why. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Pete.
I know on the second one, at least, Anthony Michael Hall had to they offered it to him. They wanted him to do it, but he was doing the movie Weird Science. And so they couldn't get him. And he chose it. And, that's another great movie, another John Hughes movie, by the way. But they decided that if they're going to recast Rusty, they decided to recast Audrey as well. So
Right.
So yeah,
Audrey had the
poor
role.
Audrey missed out.
They intended to have the same kids, but they didn't, and then they change every time, which is kind of a fun little thing about the movies.
It is.
But so, what are your thoughts on Anthony Michael Hall and Dana Barron, Rusty and Audrey, in this movie? What do you think of them, especially if you compare them to the others, but just in the movie in general? What do you like them as the characters?
Oh God, I thought they were great.
Yes,
Anthony Michael Hall was perfect in that role.
Yes.
The teenage nerdy kid, just like he was in every movie he was ever in. Yeah,
Johnny
he just
Good.
No, he grew out of it, and that's a problem. Then he looked different, and he just people didn't like him anymore.
That's why his career basically never amounted to much after that. But yeah. But for that role, yeah, he was perfect. Audrey was good too. I mean, I don't know. It's not like she was, like you said, Gifford. She had some stupid lines, but they added to the comedy. So
right.
I don't know.
The lines aren't her fault. I thought she did a wonderful job in the role.
Yes.
Thinking back to the 4 movies that we're going to cover, I liked the kids in every one of them except European Vacation.
Exactly.
I
love the kids. In the Vegas Vacation too. I think the Rusty Ethan Embry we'll get to, but he was great.
Oh, Ethan Embry's great. Yeah, ever since Can't Hardly Wait, Empire Records, I just like Ethan Embry. He's great. But yeah, I thought they did a wonderful job.
All right, I agree, obviously. So I think Anthony Michael Hall is brilliant, but I think Dana Barron's really underrated. I think she does a great job as Audrey and just fills the role perfectly. What I never knew before that I looked up this time too, though, did you know she's actually 2 years older than Anthony Michael Hall?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and you would never guess that watching it. I mean, she's not the older sibling. She was 16 and he was 14 when they started filming this movie.
Really?
Fun fact about this one, and maybe Brad, this is where you're going next, but the original script had...
Well, no, you don't know my
Audrey
fun fact. It's great.
Well, mine is going with that Audrey was originally intended to be the older sister in the movie, and that's how it was filmed. But then he hit a growth spurt, and they had to reshoot the ending of it. He grows so much, and then he was like 3 inches taller at the end of the movie than he was at the beginning of the movie. And so it turned out he was the older. You didn't notice it much,
but they don't refer to her. There's not any part earlier in the movie where you think she's the older sibling, though, right? I mean, isn't he always considered to be the older sibling?
I don't know if there's a part in the movie where you necessarily.
I guess I just
say
assumed
one's older than the other.
Maybe.
I guess I had always assumed it. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. She looks really young.
Yeah.
All right. So the kids are awesome. Next question. What are your thoughts on Clark and Ellen and their relationship? Because I got lots of great thoughts about these two.
Well, why don't you kick us off then?
Oh, okay. Sure. I love them, and they make these movies, and I think that they seem like a real couple. They seem like a real life couple. It's the most perfect casting. Beverly D'Angelo isn't in a whole lot of other stuff that she never really had much of a big career. She's in things, but she's never starred in anything. But she was just born for this role, and she is such a perfect foil to him.
I think she's been, like, by the way, like a Broadway star. She's been on Broadway.
Yeah, she has done
that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think they're just great parents, and they're a great couple. What I love and watching it this time, because this is something that my wife and I cannot do, they get in fights all the time, but they get over it just like that. They forgive each other, and but you buy it too. Like the way that they fight and the way that they forgive each other, I totally buy it. Like it's not acting. It's like that's how it should work. Unfortunately, in my household, we sit and kind of and whine and hold grudges for a while, but we're working on it.
Do we need to talk about this, Brad?
No.
Yeah. Is this another episode?
We get over it really quickly like Clark and Ellen. That's
sure.
We take things very personally. So I just think they make this series, and without them in the right casting and their chemistry, everything would change. But they're perfect for it, and I feel like they could be married in real life, and I love them.
Yeah.
And this isn't maybe this. I don't know why I put this here in my notes, but I've been kind of leading towards this with the physical humor and everything. Chevy Chase specifically, you can call this a preposterous statement. I honestly feel like he's so good in this movie, he could have been nominated for an Oscar. This is one of no, you laugh. Think about it.
I'm just.
This is one of those comedic performances
Yeah.
we've discussed on this podcast before. The sheer brilliance of it could not be duplicated by anybody else. And you watch that gas scene or him walking through the restaurant, the way he talks to everybody, the detail, the commitment, it's so good. And these kind of performances should get more credit. And I don't know what won the Oscar that year. You were not going to convince me it was better than Chevy Chase.
Who was it that we talked about on a previous episode? Yeah, Sam Rockwell was the one that said
Eddie
something
Murphy,
like
too. I
that.
think we mentioned Eddie Murphy is another one where he
deserves the credit because they are masters at their craft.
But that was one of my takeaways.
In movies, they make people feel a certain thing. And so why not? Why not put them up for an Oscar? Why does it have to be all these serious, emotional movies that
there's lots of good comedic performances, but I honestly don't know if I've ever seen a better one than in this particular movie.
Yeah. I will agree with you.
All right, what do you think about Clark and Ellen?
What I like is it's a vacation movie. And what do the adults like to do on vacation? They like to have the whoopee.
Sneak away.
The constant scenes of Clark always going after it, I absolutely love. I mean, it's the shower scene with the psycho. Can I do your back? Can I do your front? The tent, the scene in the car where her head gets stuck.
The bed, the shaky bed where they end up on the floor.
Shaky bed, and then on the floor, Weirdo-rama.
The pool.
And it never works out.
It does back at the pool. Once he nearly cheats on her. Then
that's
it does
the
work.
most preposterous part of it. Is she just springs right back at it. But yeah, she's always up for it, and it's just you can tell that there's love in their hearts for each other, and they really do like each other. They love each other, and they are perfectly cast. They play off each other so well.
Well, I think that's part, and I totally agree. And I think a lot of that is the genius of John Hughes. I think that he made movies about real people, just better than anybody else. It's like, there's a lot of great directors out there, but it's like, come on, nobody's ever going to experience that. These are movies that like everyday people, all of the movies that he made. And he just makes them work. I don't know what it is, but
and just to be clear, you're referring to him as the writer because Harold Ramis is the director of the movie.
Well, that's true. I think of it as a John Hughes movie, but you're right.
But he creates the characters in the words.
Right,
so I agree. And they
I'm sure he had a lot to do with the movie too. I think so.
No, I know. I don't want anybody to think that you think he's the director and come back and say, "Oh, Pete, you got it wrong." Like when you say Park and Rec.
My God, I hate you guys so much.
Yes, but much like Clark and Ellen, we'll get over it very quickly.
Exactly. That's how we, as friends, you can do that easily.
It is. You can relate. As a married couple, you can, like you said, Brad, you can relate to them so well.
Exactly.
Probably
I want to be just like
as much or better, especially in that's not what this episode is about, and we'll get to it, but especially in Christmas Vacation. Mm-hmm. I think that it's even more so than in this movie. But
right.
Agreed. All right. Now we have a space for any fun facts that we haven't stated yet. If you have any new, we probably got to most of mine. Actually, no, we haven't got to all of them, but
yeah, I got a couple.
Want to kick it off?
Well, I did touch on earlier that they had to reshoot the ending. It was because the original ending was that they broke into Roy Wally's house and shot him in the leg. And it did not play well with test audiences at all. So like 6 months later or several months later, they had to go reshoot the ending to what it is now.
But so speaking of John Hughes, that's one of his things. And he eventually left because he got sick of them changing his scripts. And like I don't think he was happy about that from what I've read. He liked the ending the way it was. And but that's one of those things where they changed his script to, or his story to fit better. So
I can't imagine that would have been a better ending than
no,
what we
the
had.
ending is great.
Right. It was perfect. I also had as a fun fact, Anthony Michael Hall was caught trying to peep on Beverly D'Angelo in the dressing room and stuff. So real life.
I did not know that.
It was the story was, as we just said, based on Vacation 58 was the original story about a 1958 vacation that John Hughes actually experienced and then wrote for National Lampoon.
Well, and actually, the story's told more through Rusty's point of view, right?
Yeah, I think
that's
so.
Another
yeah.
change they made is they changed it to focus on the dad instead.
Right. And we've already touched on all the other facts that I had, so I'll turn it over to Gifford.
I don't have a whole lot. Yeah, I had it was based on the Vacation 58 that was published in National Lampoon magazine. Wally World, the exteriors of the park were Santa Anita Park in California, and the interiors were Six Flags Magic Mountain. If anybody was interested in that. Yeah, that's pretty much all I had. You guys touched on a couple of ones.
So I'm a teacher. We brought that up before. One of the coolest moments of my entire career was about 8 to 10 years ago now. First day of school, I talk about who I am to the kids, and I talked about my love of like road trips, and I somehow mentioned the movie Vacation, and I brought it up on the first day of school. It's one of my favorite all-time movies. And towards the end of class, this girl walks up to me, and she goes, I know the girl that played Audrey that was in that movie. She's my aunt. So I taught Audrey's niece in my class. And I never thought of anything cooler ever happening in my career after that. And I so wanted to get her to try to go get her to get some autographs or something. And I didn't want to make her feel weird because, she's a great girl. I didn't want to. But if she knew what I was feeling when she told me that. I mean, I told her how great it was, but I couldn't wait to get home and tell my brother and my sister and everybody I knew that I have Dana Barron's niece in my class this year.
Wow, that's amazing.
Cool.
I know. Couple others. This is not really a fun fact, but nobody mentioned yet that cousin Vicky is Jane Krakowski, which most people know now, but it's just so cool to go see her in this little kid role and what she went on to do later. I looked up Beverly D'Angelo this time. Did you know she was only 31 years old when they're filming this movie?
Really?
Oh, wow.
And you never really question that she has these teenage kids. She looks the part. But no, she was like 31 years old at this time, about 9 or 7 or 8 years younger than Chevy Chase. He was more what you'd expect, but she was a little younger.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I always wondered who's running the rides when they're at Wally World.
I've always wondered that too.
Yeah,
I always find that to be interesting. And then my last little note is, again, not really a fun fact, but just looking it up on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 93% positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes, so which was totally fitting, but higher than I expected. I'm very excited.
Who are the 7% that?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Who are the
7%
of bungholes out there that didn't rate it high?
All right, so we started by talking about our memories of this movie as a kid, so we're going to wrap this up here. Just kind of your final thoughts on the family as a whole. We've hit on the kids' needs. So if you have anything else to add to the family, and then how do you relate to the movie now? Watching it as an adult and a father ourselves, how do you relate to the movie or view it now at this age?
I actually do regret. I regret not naming my children Rusty and Audrey because I've got a boy and a girl, and I could have done that, and it would have been perfect. But I do relate, because it's Brecken's at that age now too, and I do think it's very fitting. They go through the same kind of fights and arguments and all of the stuff that happens, during a road trip. It's a perfect normal family and getting into all these misadventures, and it's I don't know. I think it's perfect.
Giff?
Yeah, see, when I was watching it growing up or when I was younger, it was just all the gags you enjoyed seeing But as you're older now and you're the one driving the car on the road trip with the family, I always think of the line at the end when he's talking to Wally, and they're talking about the smell from the back seat. I know that smell. And you think about packing the car, and one thing I always think about during this movie is how many times the crap falls off the top of the car.
Yeah.
And how angry that makes me as one who packs the car. Like, seriously, like, let's do a little better job.
Well, just the initial gag right away where you can't tell when you're leaving the garage. Everything.
So in a way, it almost angers me a little bit, some of the things. Like, seriously, that's what you're going to do? But yeah,
and they have that whole back end,
right?
They got the truckster
back there, except when the dog's back there peeing on the picnic.
He's not there long.
But no, you do you relate to it, because now instead of watching as a kid and being in the back seat, with your feet up and making, in your dad's face, now you're the one behind the wheel, and you have the arguments with your wife and you're yelling at the kids, and but at the same time you really cherish being able to, do the things with them. So it all comes around now.
Well, I mean, and so I was kind of running this one, so I got a little more to say here, but I'll just try to wrap it up. But I relate to this movie an eerie amount. It's not just a movie; it's Clark himself. And you kind of just mentioned this, Giff, but the packing. I totally understand the need to try to make everything perfect. We have to hit these spots. We got to go to the Ball of Mud. Why wouldn't you go to the Ball of Mud if it's on the way? We're going to make time. And trying to do all of it and trying to make it all perfect for the family when you're probably the only one that really cares, but you think that you know what's best for everybody else. And you're trying to create these memories, and you just want them to understand that, and that someday they'll look back, but really they might not care about some of that stuff.
Have fun,
and you can't let it go. And so I totally relate to that. And luckily my road trip that I brought up, I mean, it couldn't have been more perfect. We did not have any of these problems, and we didn't have any fights. It was incredible how perfect it was. But just those highs and lows, and thinking that you know what's best and trying to make it perfect. And when it doesn't go perfect, how hard it is to try to fix that. So I really related to that this time. And I would have never noticed that as a kid. You're just paying attention to the funny lines.
Right.
I found this movie. I love this family, and I found this movie as I'm watching it this time. I've always referred to Caddyshack as my favorite movie of all time, or my other one is L.A. Story, because Steve Martin's my favorite actor of all time. I think those two and this, though, and I'm sitting there watching this this has got to be my all-time favorite movie. This movie is it's the most perfect movie for me personally. And I just found once again that I just love everything about it. Most of it's due to the casting and the particular actors and the family that are put in there. They just make it perfect. They seem so real, but they have so many flaws, but they all love each other. And you just buy it. You buy that it looks like a real life family. And that's the beauty and the genius, I think, of this movie. And that's where, when we get into our next one, I'm not going to have those same things to say about that.
Right.
But that's my final thoughts, and I couldn't have enjoyed it more. And I meant to watch it actually again before we did this. I'm going to watch it maybe tomorrow because I love it that much. So
wonderful.
And I think that will wrap up our vacation episode. We go from one of the greatest comedies of all time to one of the worst in our next episode, which is from the same. It's actually from the same canon.
It, Dad.
We'll be talking about European Vacation, and we may have a special guest.
Yes.
Thanks for listening.
It's going to help make that a more listenable episode because. Hey Pete, what should people that like this podcast do?
They should like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
And they should please go on Apple and write a review. Give us some.
That too.
Give us a review, please. We couldn't appreciate those things more. And we feel like we're gaining a little steam, but that would really help.
If you love it, tell all your friends. If you hate it, tell your enemies.
Then don't pay attention. Don't listen, please.
We'll take any listeners. We don't care.
Yes.
All right. We'll finish it with a little bit of Preacher Row. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Standing on my own 2 feet. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start to me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do.